Spring has sprung in the Pacific Northwest. As you guys can see, it's a gorgeous day, but just 2 weeks ago, literally 2 weeks ago, there was snow covering the motorhome. Here, I'll show you guys a picture of that. So yeah, now that the nice weather is here, I can finally pick up this project again where I left off. What was it, like 4 months ago? How many of you thought I was done with this project and quitting? I frequent this site, Imager. Anyway, like 3 years ago, this guy posted this bus and he said, I bought a bus and I'm turning it into a camper. I'll post updates if anybody is interested. And the thing went viral. So he never posted updates, and I think about him all the time with my motorhome. But you know, people started making jokes. I bought a dead horse and I'm turning it into a camper, that kind of a thing. So lately though, I can't believe it. The trend is coming back. The joke is renewed. And this is just from 19 hours ago. I bought a giant tungsten sphere and I'm turning it into a camper. I'll post updates. Now, for those of you who don't know, there's this other old internet, story joke thing about an immortal snail and you also being immortal, and you can only die if the snail touches you. So how do you stay alive forever? And the thing is, you encase the snail in a tungsten sphere. So that's the joke there. I bought an SR-71 Blackbird and I'm turning it into a camper. How about this lady? I bought a penny farthing and I'm turning it into a camper. So yeah, this reminded me, I need to get to work on my camper. You guys see this bucket sitting here? It's been catching drips of rainwater from up here. And it's only one of the drips. There's like 4 different drips that happen up here. We're getting a severe amount of leaking up here at the front. And it's coming in through the weirdest spot. But I'm sticking my hand in this hole here. My finger's going into this hole where there's this foam. And man, there's some white stuff. It's probably mold of some sort. Well, what's going on is the lap joint of this sheet molded compound over the sort of frame structure, also sheet molded compound. All of this is fiberglass. But that lap joint had peeled away from the sun, whatever it was. So what I did is I carved it out, filled it full of seam sealer, and then shot some screws to hold it, to suck it down, you know, back together. And I thought that would have solved the problem, but it did not. In fact, it made it worse. So what we've basically got is capillary action, wicking forces. As the rainwater comes over the front, it gets wicked up into that gap, soaks into the foam, which is all inside of this structure here, and then eventually leaks out and falls in the bucket. So the motorhome smells as bad as it ever smelled, with mold and mildew and leaking. The windows all leak. I need to replace all the rubber on the windows. At least, hey, all that time that I spent for those upper rails, that's fine. Those don't leak anymore. But there's just so many other little holes that leak. And not only that, let me show you guys this footage of the ceiling here during the snowstorm. So you can see that was actually when the snow was starting to thaw and we were getting severe condensation happening from the temperature difference between inside and outside of the motorhome. And here's the carnage from that condensation dripping. This is all mold that's grown on my leather seat here. Just so horrendous. Gross. I think I might have to get rid of this seat. Luckily, this one seems undamaged. Yeah, that was dripping all over the floor here as well. So this motorhome is going to be gutted. I'm going to redo the entire interior. But first, as I've been saying in all the videos previous to this one, I have to get the outside sealed up. And I'm going to do it in the boat builder's way, the sort of the epoxy and fiberglass boat builder's way, which is to really use the thick mastic and other boat type sealants on the outside of these cracks. You guys are probably wondering why I got myself into this deep mess of a project. And, you know, part of the reason that it's not done already is because this is very much a part-time, call it a hobby of mine. And the thing is that I grew up in homemade motorhomes that my dad made. He made 3 of them that I was a part of. Hi, Dad.
Hi.
So I'm kind of crazy because I'm doing this like motorhome project in my driveway, but I learned everything I know from you, didn't I?
You might have.
What's this picture of a red International pickup truck with some sticks sticking off the back of it?
Okay, that's an International 1.5 ton, 14-foot flatbed with dual rear wheels.
And you turned it into a house truck, huh?
I did.
Here's a picture of us in the woods.
Yeah, that's in Veneta, Oregon. The first trip, big trip.
The first trip. So you built it in Arizona in the desert, and we
Right.
drove it up here to Oregon where we ended up moving.
Right.
And then here's another picture of us on some desert road.
Yeah, that's in Idaho on the way to the Weezer Fiddle Festival, camped out.
Huh. So 1983, something like that.
It is.
Okay, here's the next picture. It's a school bus with the roof like up in the air with some crazy metal framing under it.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So I took a Sawzall and sawed off most of the roof. But I left it connected in 4 places. And then I drove it down the freeway, one exit, to this gravel pit where this guy had this crane. And I used the crane to raise the roof. I climbed up on the crane, hooked up a block and tackle, ran a rope to the eyelets that I put through the roof on the bus, and then ran the other end of the rope down to the winch on the front of my 4-wheel drive, and basically just cut the thing loose, and then I backed up my truck and up went the roof. And then we tied some ropes to it so we could stabilize it because it was a slight breeze and the thing was blowing around in the wind. And then we took 6 1-by-1-inch square tubing pieces of steel cut to exactly the right length, and we gas welded them in place, thinking that we'd drive it home and then arc weld it so it'd be really strong. And driving it back down the freeway, one exit where the roof popped up like that, people were freaking out as they drove past me. I was in the slow lane, and they were like, "Dude, your roof's blown off! Your roof's blown off!" It was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. I got home and arc welded the whole thing, put in a whole bunch more tubes, uprights. It was just an awesome experiment. It turned out great.
And so your friend Joe was the one who was helping you out with that.
Yeah, he'd already built his bus, and he had a whole welding rig inside his bus, and it was completely livable for 5 people.
So that's his bus behind ours here in the background.
Yeah, he was the man. He said, "You know why I'm a rich hippie?" I said, "Why is that?" He says, "Because I don't do woodwork, I do metal."
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next picture here, we got a picture of you and somebody else, and it looks like you're framing the inside of the bus.
Yeah, that was a guy that I hired to help me with the carpentry. We'd panel the inside after we spray foamed the entire thing. So the beauty of that whole rig was that you could stand up downstairs 6 foot tall and not hit your head on those beams that are holding up the platform that became the beds upstairs. And you could sit up in bed on top of a mattress without hitting your head on the ceiling. It was just exactly the right height.
Nice. And so we've got another picture here of the kitchen, and I think you used the actual like seats from the bus, like from when the children used to ride in it.
Yeah, well, see, we took everything out of the bus, all the interior sheet metal, all the flimsy fiberglass. We took out all the windows and all the seats, and I kept 2 seats just for that dinette, had them reupholstered.
Nice. All right, here's a picture of my bedroom. That's actually the bed that I slept on. I remember that.
Yeah. So there was clothes storage up there and everything, shelves, kids' toys, stuffed animals. We had it all.
Yep, it was like a house.
And there was a front ladder to get up to the master bedroom, and there was a rear ladder to get up to the kids' bedrooms.
Yep, I remember that too. So here's the final paint job. You got the fade going from purple to blue.
Oh yeah. But I had to sandblast the whole bus first.
Right beside the house, right? In the driveway, in the second driveway.
Yeah, with a monster compressor to blow the sand. I went through 30 bags of 90 pounds each sand. Basically, I created a beach where it was parked.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
that paint was really hard because it was lead-based paint.
Oh, the school bus paint.
Yeah, it was horrible.
But I remember that sand, that driveway was like the second flag lot driveway on the side of the house, and it was already gravel, but then it was sand.
That's right. That's right.
So here we got another project because you weren't satisfied with 2. You made some. We called this the dually pickup truck camper with a boat. Did you build both of those?
I did. But you know that what they say about boats, they say the happiest day of a man's life is the day he gets his boat, and the second happiest day is when he sells his boat. But that was true for all my rigs, all my motorhomes, and ultimately for that boat.
Yeah. So the house truck there, I don't know what to call this one. What do you call this one? The camper? The camper.
Yeah, I just called it the camper. It was a 1-ton dually crew cab.
And you basically just welded a bunch of 1-by-1 steel tubing together and then put plywood and epoxy and fiberglass over the top of
yeah,
that.
well, I had to get rid of the 8-foot pickup bed first. And then I had to design some uprights that I bolted to the chassis of the truck. And then the craziest part was I had to use like really thick wall 1x2 square tubing for the floor, because the floor was basically carrying the weight of the walls and the roof and
Right.
and the people.
Right.
So then I used 1x1 square tubing, again thin wall, for the entire structure, and I welded it all at my friend Dave's welding shop. Basically, I learned how to MIG weld in about 10 minutes.
Nice. And the boat was all plywood and fiberglass. And you built that in the garage.
Yeah, but a special kind of plywood called MDO, medium density overlay. No voids in it.
Right. So it's basically got
it's marine grade.
It's got a thin veneer of MDF over the top of the plywood, basically.
Yeah, it's brown craft paper.
Yep.
They use it for concrete forms, right? And signs.
Right. Well, cool. So now we know where I get my my disease, or I don't know what you call this, but I'm crazy for taking on this project. And I'll tell you what, after this winter, it doesn't look so great in there. I got a lot of work in front of me.
Yeah, but you were a professional carpenter and you went to architecture school.
That's true. I can get this. It's just a matter of how much time I have to spend on it.
Yeah, you really went way beyond me, man.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing, Dad.
Okay, take care.
Bye.
Bye.
It's been 2 weeks since I started this up. Let's see what it does. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. The accelerator and the brake pedal, they don't look too worn out, so I think that's an accurate mileage. 65,000 miles, basically. All right, well, it's about time I did something about this louver here on this side of the motorhome. This is the vent for the range hood, the fan that pulls the cooking smells out of the motorhome. So let's get this unriveted from the side of the motorhome, and then we can start to design a new version of it. There's always one stubborn one, isn't there? The shank on this one isn't cooperating. Maybe it's like a steel shank. There we go. All right, there's the duct tape patch to keep the water out for a couple of days. There's these plumbing vents, right? I've got 3 of them. 1, 2, 3. And these things are old. The design is... I don't know why these need to be shaped like this, or why they need to be quite so... Why does it protrude so high up? Why isn't that more sleek? This is a motorhome after all. And if you go looking on the motorhome supply websites, you'll find this exact part. There's got to be a better way to do this that's more sleek for airflow and for looks, because this is just kind of an ugly top hat looking thing to me. And it's interesting that the screws that are supposed to hold the cover down are missing on all 3 of mine, but they haven't blown off or anything like that. So yeah, anyway, let's see if we can't redesign this. Got some of these screws that are in there kind of crookedly, and they're all rusted, so at the very least I need to replace these fasteners. They're all coming out pretty easily though, so that's a good sign. In fact, I don't even think I need to use the hand drill here. I think I can go with the motorized version. Alright, now I just got to figure out a way to temporarily patch this up, maybe some duct tape, because it is raining these days, and it's going to be a couple of days until I've got this all ready to be reinstalled. We can see the the duct tape patch on the vent, so that should keep the water out just fine. And hopefully soon I'll have a new solution for that hole. I'm test fitting this vent, and I'm really liking the low profile inset vent fins there, as compared to the stock look where the louvers protruded. But there's a problem. Somehow, God only knows, I got way off in my measurements of the flange and of the holes. While the inner dimensions here work perfectly for the recess, the holes don't line up. Furthermore, these holes for this vent seem to have been drilled in after the fact, like they were stock hole locations that were never used. I think, in 1978, it was the end of the line for these motorhomes, and they were just using whatever parts they could get their hands on, and so they sourced a different vent than they originally had planned to use. So I should redesign this to go with the original stock holes because, somebody else might want to use this design and they're going to have these hole locations and maybe not my hole locations. My other option is just to fill this in with my 3D printer pen and drill holes in the flange to match the motorhome. So let me tell you guys the story of developing a new plumbing vent water ingress keeper outer thingamajigger. This is the stock one, the unchanged for 40 years design, and I'm more or less going to stick with the concept here, where you have a base piece that seals to the roof and has a flange here that seals up against the pipe, and then you have a cover that's going to cover the pipe overall. So this was my first attempt at a base piece, and you can see it has a perfectly flat base on the bottom there because I need to 3D print it on a perfectly flat bed. Well, the problem is that the roof here has a nice curve to it. So when I put this thing on the roof and tighten it down, seeing what would happen, seeing how much I could tighten it down, I knew it would flex a little bit, but I wanted to see how much. And well, you guys can see that it broke along the layer lines, and 3D prints always break along the layer lines. They're far weaker in the Z-axis. The layer lines just delaminate. This was the next design, and it's more or less the same, but the subtle change here that you can't tell is I actually separated the legs from the base. I left a 0.3 millimeter gap, which means that the two will crack exactly where I want them to and nowhere else. So I kind of designed it for the cracking, and then I added these screws. You can see those are just regular drywall screws. So I'll cut those off, and yeah, this works out all right, but it's still not good enough. This is the final design as it comes off the printer, and what you can see here is this funky material, and if I do this, you can remove the support material, which is keeping all of the, the bridging from drooping as it prints. So once this part is cleaned up, this is what I'm left with, and you can even see that I've got this flexible, this is made out of TPU thermoplastic elastomer, flexible boot that will receive the pipe and seal quite nicely around it, if I can get it over the pipe here. And then I can line these screws so that they're forward to backward, and then line up the holes here by sliding the whole thing upwards. And there we go. But let's talk for a quick second about this boot, because my original design was not quite so square flat on the top, but this was printed upside down like this. And this flexible material is difficult to print with. So you can see the wavy, corrugations, the accordion nature of it. I also put some corrugations in there just to help it compress, right? But this is some pretty stiff TPU material. They do make softer material, but it wasn't able to stand up being thin wall and under these stresses. So I had to go with the less, like the more stiff, the less floppy material. And it's working. It's working just fine. So this is basically a design constrained by printability, as is really the whole thing. So let's put a couple of screws in this, and we can see that the flange has nicely conformed to the roof line. Now we're ready for the cap. This was my first design, and it printed like so. Very easy to print, 45-degree angles. The printer is able to print, but anything more than 45 like that, and it starts to have really nasty looking outer surfaces. So for ease of printability, that design is a winner, but I don't like this sharp corner here. I don't think it looks good. See what I mean? It kind of doesn't fit the aesthetic of the motorhome. It's too sharp. So next I printed this version with a nice fillet there, but I don't know if this is coming across on camera. I had to do a lot of handwork. I had to fill this in with a 3D printer pen and sand on it, and the whole process took, like an hour and a half to get this, and it's not perfectly regular because it was done by hand, but I really do like the way this looks. It just fits with the roundy nature of the motorhome, and look at how much lower profile it is from the stock unit. But I'm not going to spend, 3 or 4 more hours of my life making 2 more end caps for those ones. So this is the solution. I printed this one with support material and it didn't work. I still had to do all of that handwork on it, and it needed to be filled in even. So support material in this situation isn't going to work. I have to make custom support material. And that's what you can see here. These radial lines are actually a part of the geometry. So they are fully, you know, part of that. But the base, the bottom inside of those radial lines, is the actual curvature that I want. This means that I can take my flush cutters here and start cutting these off like so. And once it's all cleaned up with the flush cutters, this is what I'm left with. It's a little bit rough, but it's got a nice even fillet. Take my wood file. After the rough shape is done with the wood file, go over it with the sanding block and it'll be ready for paint. All right, well, progress was made and I'm back to work on the motorhome after a 4-month hiatus, and it feels really good. So hopefully I'll be able to make a video every week for you guys. Cross your fingers, knock on wood. It's kind of a demanding thing, but we'll see. So stay tuned. See you next time. Thanks for watching.